So this past week, I was getting a bunch of messages around an update basically for Valve when it comes to their hardware with the Steam Deck and then in turn the Steam Machine, mostly just by proximity and a lot of the uncertainty with the market and what the pricing for it could be because, well, this update, it's not exactly good news or favorable news for the Steam Machine and potential high price point. And then some other info came out from analysts and it's been a whole thing, but I wanted to give it a few days just to see if maybe it was an error on Valve's part. Maybe they had an update. And going into the weekend, we don't have either of those. So let's go over all of this here today. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. So this happened, which was very interesting. It's over on Valve's Steam powered website where you would normally go and buy a Steam Deck, right? It's pretty straightforward, except you get down here and it's all out of stock. So the LCD model, 256 gigabyte model, is supposed to be out of stock because it ran out already, and they told us they were not going to replenish the stock. They even say it right down here. Once sold out, it will no longer be available. However, the 512 gigabyte OLED display and the 1 terabyte OLED display models, those were in stock, and that's $550 and $650. But they've just gone completely out of stock at this time, and we have no comment from Valve, which is interesting, and they have not come back in stock because it's you can have the website run out of maybe the amount that is allotted to it at some point, and it goes to out of stock status for a couple hours, a day maybe. But no, both models out of stock and no word as to what's happening here. This has led to a ton of speculation. I have some, we'll say, theories at this point as to what's happening here. And yeah, it does involve the Steam Machine and I guess also the Steam frame. But certainly the Steam Machine is the thing that I'm very, very interested in. So it's the thing I'm trying to follow along with here as we get info. But as all of this was going on, we also had headlines start to break with even analysts are having a hard time predicting how much the Steam Machine will cost. And this is from an interview with Games Radar and Matt Piscatella over at Circana, where he told the publication that he could see $1,000 as a system's price tag, but also admitted that he could see them going nuts and going under $700 if they want to eat some of the costs. And this is funny because in the sit down, the podcast I did with Matt Piscatella, and I posted that a week or two ago. In that podcast, we talked about just the wide market for games in the US, but the Steam Machine did come up because I asked if they would be able to track the Steam Machine, like when it comes to market, will they be able to track sales for it so we can get at least a rough comparison with the Steam Deck? That's going to be interesting because it's Valve comparing itself to itself and previous product, but also just the market, the Xbox, the PlayStation, the Switch 2. Is it going to be placed alongside of those? And he did give me an answer for that, and it was I might just post up the entire clip over on the Spawncast channel because it was genuinely interesting since he also was unsure as to how much the Steam Machine would cost. And in fact, he asked me for an estimate, what I thought, and I said $700. And I was more trying to figure out if they'll bundle something in like a game or if it'll just come with the Steam controller, ways for them to add more value without having to add more RAM. Like if they create a new Half-Life game, as has been rumored for a bit now, and they package it with it. It's not more components or parts that they have to put in and eat costs on. It's sure a game they've developed, but they're widely distributing, and hey, it's going to go in the package for the Steam Machine, and it's not necessarily going to cost them what it would if we're going to slap an extra stick of DDR5 memory in there or something. That's more or less what I'm trying to figure out because I do think it's going to be, as unfortunate as it sounds, more than $600 at this time. And the fact that we are seeing other handheld manufacturers, yes, with devices that are higher spec than what we have right now with the Steam Machine, specifically when it comes to the amount of RAM or storage involved. So Ionea's new handheld says it has eye-popping price thanks to memory shortage, and they were very blunt about it, like just saying, "Hey, this stuff's getting expensive all of a sudden," and it's happened pretty quick. There have been things that were in, like Ioneo, they'll do these different companies will do crowdfunding, and they'll start a project a year before it comes out, maybe longer, and the entire way they're developing, they're updating their clientele, everything seems fine. And now think about what they've run into. a system that, while they had an initial price figured out, like here's an early bird price, and now look where they are with some of this stuff, which by the way is crazy to think about. I mean, look, Ioneo, they do have some very high end handheld devices, but $4,300. And look, it's 128 gigabytes of RAM. It's 2 terabytes. This is the enthusiast of the enthusiast of the enthusiast of the power user. Most people, just about everyone actually, really doesn't need that much RAM for a handheld. I understand people will say, "Hey, on PC, I do a lot when it comes to, I mean, at this time AI, where you you do need quite a bit of RAM for that." But you're somebody who does significant work, maybe on like the workstation side, and you do need a lot of RAM. Okay, I get that. But for a handheld like this, I know it's a mini PC, but you kind of get what I'm saying. You would probably default to a desktop build or some crazy kitted out laptop for something more work related, we'll say. But I mean, even if you look at the 32 gigabyte, 1 terabyte model, 32 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, $2,000. And I mean, look, they say they're not going to make any money. They're not going to profit on this thing. Like they're going to essentially break even because they say the storage vendors are killing us. Memory shortage has already caused price hikes for PC graphics cards, RAM, SSD, and other components. And it has. Right now, NVIDIA, while they were slated to unveil their Super Series NVIDIA cards this past CES, they did not. Obviously, you didn't hear anything about that. And it seems that they're going to just pass on releasing any new video cards for 2026. And the 60 series could end up falling into 2028, with a lot of that coming down to the allotment of DRAM is mostly being pushed to AI data centers, because it's right now for these companies that are, of course, looking for the most amount of money possible to make. I mean, it's like a sure thing right now with the amount of money that's flowing around in AI, not necessarily for the end goal and where the whole AI sector is going, but for the part vendors, people who are creating and selling DRAM. I mean, for them, yeah, where it's just exchange of money and parts, and they're over AI. These AI companies are like overpaying for some of this stuff to get priority. I mean, I feel like everyone would do that. Like, if you were in charge of a business, you had to answer to shareholders, and you're gonna take the most amount of money as possible. So at this time, it kind of leaves less and less DRAM out there for the market on the back end to be able to put some of these devices together. So they also have to bid higher, which then brings us, of course, back to Valve with the Steam machine and why the Steam Deck is out of stock. So the number one theory that I see going around is that they are rationing RAM or DRAM, whether it's their orders or they're taking X amount of dollars that they normally would have to stock Steam Deck, and they're moving it over so they can launch the Steam machine and also have, I would say, a decent runway for post release hardware. Because let's say this thing comes out, they say first half of 2026. Let's say it comes out in April or May. May probably the latest. June is like, man, you guys really meant first half 20. You were cutting it close. Let's say like April or May. They then have a good portion of the year to continue providing Steam Machine systems up until the holiday season, where, like everything when it comes to commerce, they're going to see a spike in terms of orders. So they want to make sure that they have like a pretty good contract in place. And as we heard from even Nintendo somewhat recently, their strategy when it comes to the Switch 2 to continue having I'd say a decent price on their RAM or their memory is to order more than they would need so that they can continue that scale. So maybe Valve is looking at this saying, well, the Steam Deck's it's had a good run. It's still something we'll be looking at and working on, but for now, we're going to be allotting a lot of our buying power towards getting the Steam machine off and running. The other thing that some people are starting to realize, the Steam Deck might be going up in price, because I do look at this and think, man, okay, 550 for the 512 gigabyte OLED model that has 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 in there, and I mean, even a 512 gigabyte. I don't know if people have looked up even pricing around solid state drives right now. A 1 terabyte is crazy. I was at Best Buy 2 days ago, and I just happened to look at their computer parts. They have it behind the glass. And I mean, I'm looking at 32 gigabytes of DDR5, like SODIMM memory, that would actually go in the Steam machine. That's 16 gig, but this is 32 gigabytes that I'm looking at. It was $300. I'm thinking, man, that is That's wild stuff. So 16 gigabytes seems to be around just on our end. Valve and others would get better prices. It was still like 180 bucks. I'm just thinking, man, that's crazy stuff. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at these SSDs, these 1 terabytes that for like the high speed stuff was more than $150, up to $200. And then you start looking at what they have to offer for a $650 price or even a $550 price. And it makes less and less sense at this point with this price tag. And then clearly the 256 gigabyte model made no sense at $400 because they just stopped making it. And then there's the other elephant in the room with Valve. The longer this whole Steam machine goes on where they haven't released it and we're still waiting for the price, and we get even into June, and that's when they start shipping the thing. Microsoft is eventually going to talk about their next Xbox, and I do think it will be priced higher than the Steam machine, but I also think it'll be quite a bit more capable, and it's going to allegedly, it seems with rumors, going to run Steam and the Epic Game Store and GOG and all these different launchers because it's going to be a living room Windows PC. A PC that's set up for the living room, similar to the Steam machine right now. So that will be some pretty stiff competition. I still think when we get there, like in holiday 2027, and you figure Valve would want at least a pretty good head start to try to get some attachment rate in the living room before the next gen Xbox shows up. Look, the Xbox, while in the console scene compared to PlayStation and Nintendo, they would be the small fish, right, in the big pond. When it comes to console sales, Microsoft themselves, massive, obviously, but in terms of number of consoles out there and install size, it's still quite a bit larger than the Steam Deck. So if you take that into account and then go, okay, well, if that translates over to the next gen Xbox, it will outsell the Steam machine by quite a bit. So Valve, they want to get the show on the road, but they also don't want to price themselves out of it. If this thing ends up being $700 or $800, something like that, and then the next gen Xbox shows up at $1,000, there's a price difference. But it won't seem like that much when you see, oh wow, the next gen Xbox can actually do a lot in terms of visuals, 4K, all this stuff that maybe the Steam machine can't do. So Valve's in an interesting spot, and the fact that they don't have a Steam Deck available now to purchase, I mean, it's concerning, for the Steam machine and how this is all going to go down for Valve. They still say they're shipping first half of 2026. So here's hoping we find out about that price and when we can order one of these things in the next month. I'm thinking we're going to find out sometime in March, because if we get to March 31st or 30th and we still don't know what the price is, I'd have some serious questions for Valve at that point. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.